I return.
Oh,
we
hey.
go? Okay.
Oh, are we good?
I guess.
Hello.
Here. Luna, you'll have to turn your camera back on. Yep, she's turning it back on. We did it.
Hey.
We did
I
it!
got us a guest finally.
Yay, Luna!
Wait,
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
hi!
we're gonna change the names around now.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
wait. That's not Sophie. Hold on, I got this.
Sorry.
No, you're
it was-
fine.
no,
Do not
totally not you.
apologize.
Don't worry about it.
Don't
Don't worry.
worry,
We had a
don't worry.
massive
Yeah.
problem.
Okay,
Yeah,
Tim,
it's
you can
okay.
put your chair back
It's
up if you
okay.
I
like.
can put my chair back up now.
Hey, Luna, why don't you introduce yourself to the stream? Tell us all who you are.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Luna. I'm so happy to be here to meet and talk to all you guys. I'm a Vietnamese communist living in Vietnam, and I make videos about Vietnamese food. How to teach you how to cook Vietnamese food. The traveling vlog, and of course I talk about political stuff.
Turn up those two sliders on the left.
Got some technical
You
assistance.
can
Yeah,
hear me.
EJ's doing.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah.
EJ.
Hey, EJ.
Hey, EJ. Yeah.
Okay, so you can hear me better now, right?
A little bit. I'll just, I'll boost everyone and then I'll turn everyone down. We do that in fact.
Oh, okay.
So we just got a new mixer, and this is the first time we work with this mixer on Discord. That is
Oh,
why
right.
everything is so
That's
cool.
Oh my
always an
god,
issue,
what a
yeah.
time.
Yeah. I know about that.
Okay, so yes, I make videos about Vietnam, and so very nice to meet you all today.
It's very nice
Yeah,
to meet
lovely to
you.
meet you
I've been
too,
following you for a
honestly,
while.
yeah.
You're very, very cool. And I'm
Same here,
super,
yeah.
super psyched to have you on and to formally finally meet you. Hi, nice to meet you. And it really, I'm sorry, I'm just very excited that you're here. You are
Yeah,
our
me too.
first guest for this new show.
Oh yeah.
Which is super great. And I don't know, I really appreciate you being here. And I'm just going to stop talking because I'm just really excited that you're here. That's all I'm going to say.
Gush away.
It's getting
Gush
good
away.
right now. You're so cool. You're so cool.
So Luna, the topic today is charity versus mutual aid. And we already talked a little bit about that distinction, but we were also talking a bit about examples of mutual aid and how they build up into dual power over time because you the people just providing for themselves and for each other. And I thought you might have some examples to talk about that.
Sure. I live in Vietnam, so I mean, I was born and I live here for 30 years, and I've seen so many times the mutual aid of Vietnamese people between Vietnamese people did help each other a lot. I was born in a village in the center of Vietnam, and we got terrible flood every 2 or 4 years. And the thing is that I can see is that Vietnamese people, when any bad things happen like that to us, the very first thing happened was we got together and we helped. And we actually, from a very grassroots level, we have all kinds of unions already. We have a women's union, we have a communist youth union, we have a workers union, we have a laborers union, we have a farmers union, something like that. So it is union is very, very, very strong in Vietnam, and anything happened like that, whenever anything happened, we got together and we get it done within a week. So it is a true story that a few years ago, there was a terrible flood in my village, and I called my mom. My mom told me about that. I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mom." A week later, me and EJ went back home to my village to see my mom, and the village was totally fine. And that's why my mom wasn't flood last week. She said everything's done.
Wow.
So it turned out to be
Don't
that.
worry
Yeah,
about it.
see?
Don't worry about it. We fixed it.
no.
It's fine.
We were talking about this earlier about how white people have a hard we have such a hard time understanding this concept of when something goes wrong, or even if it doesn't go wrong, it's like you're saying for you, for Vietnamese people, you come out and you're obviously we help each other and it's all fine, and then for white people we have to okay, so let me get this right.
Yeah.
When things go wrong, you help each other. It's just such a we've been trained to believe that everyone's our enemy, and it's such a cool thing to hear your
it's
perspective.
weird.
Is so naturally coming.
You're so weird.
Yeah. True.
You're weird.
Actually
white
true.
people explaining to other white people okay, so sharing. It's when you have a thing. Okay, imagine this cup. I could give this to you.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
What's the catch?
Wait,
Who's
Luna.
gonna pay for
Luna,
that?
are you understanding?
Who's gonna
Let's
pay
go.
for that?
Yeah, exactly.
There's like a really similar thing down here in times of like when there's like a disaster or something like that, we often get a lot of kind of mutual aid networks centered around what we call we have marae, which is like kind of so you have like your iwi, which is your tribe, and then an iwi is comprised of hapu, so hapu are like sub-tribes. And then, so Hapu have their own marae, which would be like, kind of like the center, like where, what would like way back in the day, you would have said this is like a village or something, it's like where all the main, like kind of, where the buildings are, where it's like the meeting house, all those kind of things like that. And there's been like so many times where it'll be like, like a flood, or even in times like with the pandemic at the moment, where these kind of like rural kind of like disaster responses have been all handled by like these small Maori mutual aid networks centered in marae. And and you see them, even like there's ones marae in cities that are like housing the homeless like literally every night, like feeding people, doing all these kind of things. And a lot of people like like a lot of people have this weird assumption about like, oh, if they're doing something, it's only for, it's only for Maori or whatever like that. But like, I've seen it like, like over and over again, like people from all walks of life being saved by these kind of like these small initiatives or whatever. And even like, like home, even like there's like educational programs run by, like these like kind of grassroots, grassroots Maori organizations where they're like getting kids computers and things like this, and it's like, it's so wild because it's like, this is like what a lot of Maori consider like, the natural state, like our natural way, te ao Maori. This is like kind of like the way that we do things or whatever. And then, like people, you always get people like kind of critics or whatever being like, oh, but who's going to pay for this? Like at the end of the day, who foots the bill for this? And it's like, man, it's just like, it doesn't matter. Like if there's like a debt that's racked up or whatever, it's like, it's like, yeah. But like who, if it doesn't get done, who pays then, like who pays? Like what's the human cost if it doesn't get done, right? Like,
Well, we have like areas of the United States, because I'm an American, like I mentioned earlier. I know everyone knows at this point because I keep mentioning it. But like, yeah, it's shocking. I know. But as an American, there's parts of America that are still dealing with the same. I mean, this shouldn't shock anyone. Like we have like immense, like America might be one of the most ridiculous nations in that we prop ourselves up as like the best thing ever. We have like the wealthiest people, and then we have the most horrendous living conditions and the most almost comically depressing like scenarios, like just like somebody dying of like thirst in front of a Starbucks or something. Like it's just like so like come on, like it's just so ridiculous.
It's like comic book villain.
Yeah, it's like comic book villain.
Yeah.
Like I know in Flint, Michigan, the pipes are still contaminated. People are still not able to drink clean water in Flint. People are still being poisoned. And what Luna, what you're saying is like when people show up to like when there's a disaster, it's like all taken care of because everyone gets together and just fixes it. It's just like it's really, we need to keep having these conversations because especially as like white people are so self-centered in our whiteness that we think that the only things that we've ever thought of at the top of our head is the only way that it can ever be. And that certainly, where's the, like someone in the chat was making a joke, but like this is honestly what it comes down to. A lot of white people just insist like something has to have a profit motive.
Yeah.
For there to be like any motivation. And they've been taught these things, but then that same whiteness leads them to believe that nobody else has any good ideas. And so it's like, it just creates this like, that paralyzes you.
When you do hear about it, they always take it from that really like entrepreneurial angle, they'll be like, this school kid, worked really hard to save up all this money to pay off his classmates' lunchtime debt, and it's like, why do these kids have lunch debt?
Heartwarming story.
Heartwarming.
This is horrific.
To pay for his mom's cancer bill or something.
So he can help pay the lunch debts for his classmates. Like, it's a heartwarming story. Don't you feel it?
I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned when you were talking about Luna, when you were talking about the floods and stuff in Vietnam, and then how in Vietnam, there are already these unions, like a bunch of unions already, right?
Yes.
Because that's what we were talking about, chat, earlier, about the dual power structure, right? I don't know how that relates to Vietnam and stuff, but like that is an example of how people coming together in unions can then be the force that the people rely on rather than the state, right? And I assume that's kind of what people want to do in Vietnam, right?
The thing is that like the system in Vietnam is totally different from any system in the West that you ever heard of. So I hope that you can all have like open mind, and I'm gonna give you a deeper analysis about how the system is working in Vietnam. Please open mind.
Everyone,
I'm sorry,
put a smiley in the chat if you have an open mind.
I'm ready.
Let's see it. Engage.
So here's the thing.
Or
The people and the government of Vietnam, we work together as one entity. And don't forget this, the government of Vietnam is formed after the Communist Revolution. It's not a bourgeois state like the US. So the thing is that like when we have women's union, communist youth union, and workers union, laborers union, we got encouraged. The encouragement from the state, from the local government to form all of that. And actually, the local government will give people advices when we want to start a union like that, and we got our right protected by the local government. And when the, like, for example, as the flood happened, okay, of course, the first thing we do is that our people go together and help. But at the same time, the local government will also send like military or policemen or volunteer, all kind of volunteer to go help and instruct, like, because they have the information. So they, hey, instruct, like, this spot has the worst flood. Okay, everybody, if you have a time and effort, go there and help. Okay? And another thing is like, we trust the local government so freaking much that like when somebody wants to give donation, the first thing we will look for is not like NGO or anything. We'll go to the fatherland front and donate our money or food and clothes or medicine there, because we know and we trust them that they will know who's and where gonna need what the most.
Right.
Yeah.
So like we work as one entity like that, because like we have the trust between each other. It's totally not like the EJ told me about what's going on in the USA when like a natural disaster happened, and I was shocked when I learned that 100%. They are still homeless people, lost their house because of Katrina.
Yes!
Yeah.
It's people are still suffering from Katrina. It's like it's been so long. Like I was in high school when it happened, I think. Like it was just and by the way, I'm pretty old, so that's a thing. That should shock people that's taken that long.
Luna, I remember you I can't remember if it actually was you or EJ saying something about like when the pandemic started. And I wound up going around to like everyone I knew and just telling them this because I was like blown away. It was just like in Vietnam, when the cops see that someone doesn't have a mask, they're like, here's a mask.
Here's a mask.
Yeah.
Like for us, it's like the cops are there out there like policing people. Like I could tell the story in more detail, but like on the first day of this year, my girlfriend and I were in just a local public park at night, but like not even that late, like 9:30 p.m. and a police helicopter, I'm not kidding, a police helicopter came low and like stayed there to intimidate us out of a public park, and then like hovered over our street and watched us until we went in our front door and didn't leave until we'd gone in our front door. Like I can't.
Just
this literally happened. Like this shit is hard for us to imagine in capitalist countries, because for us the state exists to mediate class tensions in favor of the ruling class. The idea of a state that exists for the people and to help the people is like fucking mind-blowing to us, right?
Yes, it's alien to you, right?
yeah, literally.
Yeah.
So if you reckon,
and also like the flood. Let me finish real quick. The government of Vietnam even give people free land.
I remember your tweet about that.
how it blew up.
Yes, right.
This is
yeah.
so
I
good.
remember your
So-
tweet about that, Luna. I'm so
And
sorry.
got
People are so
fucking mad at
ridiculous.
you about it.
Yeah.
And it was just
Free
like,
farmland
because they
and then
literally
free
can't
land for
imagine it.
houses.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm just
Yeah,
having a
people
whole
were
like,
just wild.
Twitter is
Go on, Tim.
So
wild.
wait a minute, but I'm a petty bourgeoisie. I'm a
Yeah,
landlord.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah,
like
yeah.
a plot of
I
land
am
like
secret.
twice
Well,
a
it's
day.
not you, petty farmer. Yeah.
I secretly
Um,
own like 500 square
Yeah,
kilometers
that's
bigger than New
because they didn't
York.
understand measurements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go on, Tim. What were you gonna say?
All I was gonna say was, do you think that the cops in the helicopter were watching a Vosh stream when they were? Yeah, but,
No, I think they tuned into Red Planet. I reckon
Oh,
those,
yeah,
are some
yeah.
really,
Can
those
I-
are actually some really based cops who are watching Red Planet right now.
Oh, yeah,
They were
that's
like,
right.
we just want to wave. We just want to wave.
All
Hi,
cops are
Sophie.
bad
They were like,
unless
oh shit, that's
you
Sophie.
watch Red Planet. Right.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Also, just I also wanted to talk about Luna briefly mentioned about when there's like a emergency or whatever, not going to give money to the NGOs and all that kind of stuff, which I think is a really good point, because there are a lot of there's a lot of NGOs out there that are very exploitative, like very, and especially in
Ooh,
times
boy.
of disaster. I think Plastic actually mentioned earlier up, because Plastic in the chat, who they studied architecture, about how some of the structures that they build, these NGOs build, are just so terrible that they end up like not being fit for purpose, and they have to be torn back down and rebuilt and everything. Anyway, and I've heard of similar things, where people will like they'll be like, okay, cool, all your houses were wiped out, we'll build all these new houses or whatever like that, and there'll just be these shitty things that will leak and fall apart. But like, if you look at the contract for the people that built it, they have an existing relationship with the NGO, and it's just this like money spinning thing where they're trying to like, the NGO works to as an organ to like funnel capital through to these developers and things like that. And it's like, it's actually like, you have to approach all of these things just with like extreme skepticism, whereas like the goal is with a mutual aid network that like you just like you don't have to worry about it because it is like it's a horizontal structure. It's not like someone up the top choosing where the money goes and they're funneling contracts here, there, whatever, blah blah blah. Like I just
They
remember
afford like
that.
rich people to write off taxes too.
Yeah, absolutely,
totally,
absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
No, we were saying this earlier. Like, charity exists within capitalism, like for several purposes, and none of them are really very good. Like, but one of them is like to convince people that there isn't enough, and so people have to live off the generosity of people who will give money, and like it's a virtue to give money. When actually, and then all the focus gets put onto like billionaires who are giving money, actually like proportionate to their earnings. It's the working class who give all their money, not the ruling class.
Something Nat said in the chat as well, and she said, and they often just exist to serve imperialist interests.
Totally.
Dumping surplus food from imperial countries and crashing local food markets while paying American businesses to do it. That's like a huge thing if you look up the way that like the whole like secondhand clothing donations to places like Africa, and the way that undermines garment industry, like local garment industries, and all that kind of stuff. And there's like, we get that throughout the Pacific as well, like small islands that aren't able to develop their own independent industries and things because of the way that the New Zealand government kind of, does things like this, keeps them on a leash, and different NGOs that operate throughout the Pacific kind of just exist as organs of this, like kind of Pacific imperialism.
Yeah, I think it's really worth focusing on that for a second. It is absolutely a feature of neocolonialism, the way that Western countries will absolutely like use what they call aid and they pretend is charity to like control the rest of the world. Like
God.
we all know, right, that like America makes way too much corn, and it's not just because Americans love corn syrup, ha ha ha. Like it's because they put that corn into other countries like as foreign aid packages. But those countries can also grow corn and often also like have corn industries, and that's exactly why they're doing it. Because if the country is just flooded with American corn, then their own industry just can't do shit, and their country is just like completely devastated by the economic impacts of that. No, it's a thing. It's a
legit thing.
Shit's
corn
always
and like
worse than you
cotton,
think
I think is
is
another one America does loads of that with. Like Tim already said, like the garment industry being undermined by like secondhand clothing donations. Like
Nat's just put a link in the chat to an article about that actually in Ghana.
Yeah, Galdem are actually. Yeah, I know about Galdem. Who do
Galdem's
that
a good
story.
resource, yeah.
Really, really good.
US does
yeah.
it with wheat too. Wow.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
there's heaps of stuff in New Zealand. We do that with like a lot of dairy products and things like that, and also like and just actually most of our kind of like agriculture stuff is yeah, and it's like this wild thing where like there's so much focus put on the political interests of farmers and things over here, whereas like they are a very small portion of the country that do not like it's like less than 5% of their produce is stays in New Zealand, and it's
Right.
kind of like this weird thing where it's like we have this idea of like so all these like farmers are just like feeding the nation and all this kind of thing like that, but a lot of it is like they're producing goods to send out to the Pacific. There's like a lot of stuff like tinned foods and stuff like that that actually kind of undermine their local farming, local agriculture, and all this kind of shit. And it's like it's wild when you really get into it and you see that all this, like, you think of as charity growing up, you think like, oh, we're helping out all these smaller nations and stuff. And it's like, no, we're absolutely, like, this is the leash. Like, this is just what the leash looks like.
Absolutely. That's such a good way to put it.
Sophie,
yeah, shit.
real quick, when you said the state exists to mediate class tensions in favor of the ruling class, remind me of this is so off. Do you remember that?
Oh my god, the squirrel!
The
oh my
squirrel. God. So I did the really quick chat on my Twitter. I'm friends with I'm a freak. Okay, I'm a vegan. I love animals. I'm a freak. Just expect things like this. Okay,
a freak.
I befriend crows and squirrels and rats and stuff. I'm a fucking.
This is maybe for another time, but literally. Everyone should be befriending crows because crows will fight your enemies, and like if every communist befriended crows, the cops would never be. I'm just saying. I think the cops tried to come get you, and they get fucking swarmed by crows. I'm just saying.
We're gonna see more and more people.
You know, cops have no aim. They're gonna snipe their little
I'm
like
sorry,
crow heads.
Mule's right.
Alternatively,
it's the official position of the show that we will see people befriending crows who will then fight cops. It's not something we're endorsing people to do. We're not telling people to attack cops with crows.
I mean, befriend crows anyway because they're based animals, but like not for that specific reason. Right?
I want to quickly play so chat can see this because I did a contest of like whoever responds with like I said reply below with something you wanted me to tell the fox. I named the squirrel Fox because it's tail's very poofy. I'll pick a reply and tweet a video of me telling them it. And of course, I chose Sophie's because, come on. So,
state exists
hold on.
to mediate. Honey, did you know that the state exists to mediate class tensions?
I never seen a squirrel in real life.
Really?
Yes, never seen one squirrel in my life. So cute.
Very cute.
You can feed them like a blueberry, and they hold it like it's a fucking pumpkin. Like they have tiny little hands, and they'll just like hold it up to their head like it's a fucking pumpkin, and just like take huge munches.
All right, that was
cute.
Fucking love animals with little hands.
Off-topic thing, but I just wanted.
Yeah.
All right, I'm done.
But yeah, I think the fundamental idea we're driving at here is about people providing for each other, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody in the chat
asked
if someone can.
Somebody in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I just say like somebody in the chat I saw asked like how does government, the local government in Vietnam help? And I said like, well, this is because to me it's so obvious. But yes to you because you don't know because you don't live in that same system. So I'm gonna answer real quick. Is that like
Luna, you're really just rubbing it in like what shitty places we live in at this point.
No, we have freedom.
So
that's true. I forgot about the freedom.
To lose your house.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
Freedom fries.
Thank you.
No, I forgot about
Please
the
be
freedom.
respectful.
I did forget about the freedom.
Thank you.
Yeah. And democracy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Vote
right.
red or blue.
I keep all my freedom and democracy just here off screen. You can't see it, but it's just right there. Like it's right there.
So the government of Vietnam is like, it's just simple. First, they give advice for people if they want to form like a union, farmer unions, or like cooperative, agricultural cooperative. The local government will give you advice about like what you're gonna do and what you need to do to have like official permission from the government. Is so easy. And like, and if you have that, receive that and their advices and their help, and then you actually form a union or cooperative, you will have a lot of like what you call it, like help from government, like giving you free advices every time you need to. And if the cooperative, like agriculture cooperatives, they will also help you find customers and also help you deal with the best price ever. And if you have anything problems with the like companies who buy your products, you can just go and help or ask for help from the government if you want to sue them or something. It's very close like that. Also, like natural disasters, the local government will collect information and will send like soldiers and police and volunteers to go to help. And then they will also like direct like all the farmers union, women's union about like who and where needs help the most. And then redirect, like, of course, like for flooding time, the central government sent like tons and tons of rice for free to the local area, and local area will redistribute free rice to people like that. And at the same time, Vietnamese people donate rice, food, money, clothes, medicine, and then they also redirect all the help like that. And like, because the local government, they have the information, but they don't have the human force. So they work closely with the unions in local area to redistribute that. And just like as one entity like that. So that is why when last year, a terrible flood in central Vietnam, and lots of my audience said like, hey, Luna, do you want to set a GoFundMe for Vietnam people in flood? It was like, no, we don't need to, we're fine. And then after like 1 or 2 months, we're fine.
That's
like
so
that.
great.
Imagine
Yeah.
living in a
Okay.
fucking country where they care about people. Fucking imagine.
I
Jesus
always-
Christ.
I
always,
literally cannot actually. I literally
always-
have
Go on,
cannot
Neil.
Yeah.
imagine.
I always attribute like the ending of my doomerism to Sophie just saying to me once on stream, yo, just like don't be a doomer, right? But I think it probably started with watching Luna's videos, because
Yeah.
when I first started watching your videos, Luna, and obviously learning about Vietnam in its socialism and stuff, it was like, holy shit, this is a place where all the things we want to happen are sort of like happening. Like it can exist, right? It does exist.
It is possible.
Right,
Yeah.
it's possible. And I think that's so fucking important for people to learn. And I cannot recommend Luna's channel enough, honestly.
Yeah,
Like I've
really cool.
used your channel before to like explain what communism is to people. Do you know what I mean? And explain how like states can end up actually serving the people rather than oppressing them. So yeah,
Right,
100%,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, on the topic of flooding, this has actually reminded me, I actually talked about this on DJ Mule's channel before, but Bill Gates, wonderful philanthropist who everyone loves, wrote a book called, well, he didn't fucking write it. Sorry, I know someone who like knows his family. He didn't fucking write it. It was ghostwritten. But there was a book published under Bill Gates' name, which is called How to Avoid a Climate Catastrophe. And it's a horrible fucking manifesto for green neo-imperialism. It's just a fucking manifesto for why Western capitalist countries should like enforce dominion over the rest of the world. And honestly, like if you want to read the exact counterpoint of it, right? Climate Leviathan by Joel Wainwright and Jeff Mann. I recommended it before, but like they like what they're explaining in that book, Climate Leviathan, is what Bill Gates is like actively advocating for. But he does. But I've said this to Mule before. There's this like sob story he comes up with to talk about like a poor Appalachian farmer who like can barely afford to pay their bills, because a lot of farmers are like the poorest people in the world, and he tells this basically hypothetical, like this Appalachian farmer, all his land gets flooded, and then all his grain is rotting, all his like he can't even sell his like cattle or anything because he can't get it to anywhere because all of the infrastructure is flooded over and all of this stuff. He just loses everything, completely bankrupt, and has to sell the land that his family's owned for generations, right? It's like, oh, so sad. But then you examine some of the like context around that outside of the book, right? It's like, okay, so first of all, we're imagining this farmer's going to go away, maybe get a job in a city or something. No. That farmer's going to work on the same fucking land for the person he sold it to, because that's the sickness of fucking capitalism. It's like he's going to be like working to pay rent to the fucking capitalist scumbag who bought his family's land,
in Hawaii,
right?
Unfortunately,
and like the most shocking, most upsetting context you can learn is the biggest agricultural landowner in the United States is Bill Gates. So in this hypothetical, he's fucking telling, literally, he would be the guy who's buying that shit. And I
wonder if he read it before he published
right?
it.
Like I said this before to Mule, but like in that hypothetical, the reason that Bill Gates wants to buy up that land, even though it's flooded, is that different areas will flood at different times, and like he can just like he can keep it profitable because he can just like grow stuff on the land that isn't flooded if he owns it all. And the same could be true if all the farmers worked together in community with one another, right? If they were working together, it would be fine. It doesn't need to all be owned by Bill Gates and for them to be working as fucking debt peons or serfs to Bill Gates. Sorry, I was just reminded of that. I actually had a question for Luna. You've mentioned a women's union a few times, and there are two women in the regular hosts of Red Planet, and I'm kind of considering unionizing against the male hosts. So, like, can you tell us more about? Can you tell us more about the women's union? Because I'm really curious about that.
I hate men, so I would also love to hear about this.
So,
same to be
about in Vietnam, this is how we organize. Believe it or not, even though we are a poor developing country, but we are super organizing people. Every street or every like about 200 households will form a community, and we will democratically vote for the community leaders, and everybody can just volunteer to be that group. And also all the women in a community like that will form a women's union as a grassroots level, and then higher from the district level, all the unions like got together into a federation of women's unions, and then all the way up to the national level. The National Federation of Women's Union is one of the very powerful part of our political party, political system. It's like it's more like anarcho-syndicalist style like that.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Because we have unions together, form.
Oh wait, hang on. But I heard, but obviously Vietnam will hate anarchists, right? You don't do anything like anarchists ever, any of the time, right? That's what I heard from really smart people.
And anarchists, they just don't get on. They never get on. It's never happened.
So a women's union, we care for women. Everything that relates to women, such as like domestic violence, is a big thing in Vietnam. And they protect like children's right and mother's right. So like one of my cousins, when she got divorced last year, and she had horrible husband, and her child was just like 2 months old when they got divorced, and her husband, because coming from rich family, so they just trying to take the baby, and they did take the baby. And my cousin was the one actually like look for the help from the local government and the women's union. The women's union was the organization who gave her advices and introduced lawyer for her, and she did win, and she took her baby back, and she got divorced. It's something like that. It's something that like our daily life, we will need their help, and they did help. And another thing is that like when the COVID-19 happened, and we had like in Da Nang, the city where I live, we in strict lockdown. We cannot go out of our house at all for a month. So women's union in every community together, they have a connection with farmers in rural area. So they order and they buy really cheap food because they directly from farmers in rural area. And many times poor farmers donated vegetable to people in the city because we are in strict lockdown and we can't go to work. So like bring vegetable and food from local area to the city and redistribute it, and it just become like a force that will help whenever we need and focus on women and children. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's fucking rad.
Yeah, I also noticed that Rob Rousseau is in the chat and said Bill Gates, also the top shareholder behind the conglomerate illegally building pipelines on indigenous land in BC, Canada now as well. Just like, hell.
So like I unfortunately listened to, which was in many ways worse, the climate book that Bill Gates put out, because the preface is read by Bill Gates. Like read by Bill Gates, and then like
Yeah.
the rest of the fucking book is Will fucking Wheaton. I was just like, oh god. But like yeah, the book
Wesley.
the book starts with like the literal first two sentences are about how like under COVID like the climate situation's gotten better because capitalist production slowed down, and then like no reflection on that, just moves straight on. And then the whole preface is about how Bill Gates has noticed like young passionate people protesting, telling him to divest his investment in fucking fossil fuels. And he writes like, it reminds me of the young passionate people from when I was growing up, people protesting against the Vietnam War, people against this and that, and they were all really cool. Anyway, I'm not going to divest. Like, that is literally the preface. It's him just being like, that really reminds me of all these people who are on the right side of history. Anyway, I am not going to divest these stocks.
Yeah. He's going to be like, you know, like, not going to read that, thanks.
Yeah, literally.
Talking about Bill Gates, is he the biggest farmland owner in the USA?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And Sophie, just imagine this. You just talk about story of a person got like lost his house because of the flood to the Bill Gates' hand. Imagine this in the parallel universe. That person, when his house got destroyed and his land got destroyed by the flood, the local government first will send military to go fix his house. And then after that, he will calculate all the loss he had on his house, on his land and his farm, and then file that to the local government, and he received the money back for help. And the local government also, in the next crop, they send him like free seeds and also free animals such as like pigs or cows if he wants to have an animal farm. Or if the flood, like his house keep flooding every year, the local government will give him even a bigger piece of land so he can build his house, a new house, totally for free.
Holy
shit.
Like insurance,
for
like,
Yes, and then whenever he moves, he will also have at least 500 square meter of rice farm going with him if he still wants to be a farmer.
Fucking hell! Oh my god!
That's in the parallel universe.
Parallel universe based America instead, where it works like a reasonable country.
Absolutely,
and we are not
everything.
rich, by the way. We're not rich. We're just a poor developing country, and we are not perfect.
Right.
You've mentioned.
I just wanted to like throw it. I just wanted to like just very quickly. I only just recently started watching Star Trek, and I only just realized why people were talking about Wesley and being Will Wheaton. I didn't realize
how do you feel
that
about
Will
Wesley?
Wheaton was.
How do you feel about Wesley?
I mean, it's like he's so annoying. I don't know if he like redeems himself or whatever, but he just seems like a
he doesn't.
just like a little.
He's always the same.
know-it-all
He's just like
nerd,
older.
whatever.
We're not doing a Star Trek derail. We can totally do a
You
Star
know, I
Trek.
just wanted to say,
I
like,
want to
because I
say-
saw
a whole Star Trek episode. It would be great. We're not doing a Star Trek
Quit.
I
derail
was like,
right now.
why is everyone in the chat talking about Wesley? Like, what is going on?
We have a perfect name for people like Wesley. Because in Vietnamese, con nhà người ta means like other house child. Means that like he always perfect, and we always got compared to them by our parents, and that's so fucking annoying.
That's exactly Wesley. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's Wesley.
I was
like,
gonna ask.
perfect,
I
handsome,
love that.
smart.
I love it.
I was going to ask Luna, you've mentioned this a few times as well, and this is definitely straying a little bit off of the mutual aid stuff because this is governmental instead. But you've mentioned a few times, like the military and the police doing stuff like helping rebuild someone's house after a disaster, shit like this. And like, I'm wondering, like, that's got to be hard because like the time when you're not like shooting dogs and like chasing teenagers and like, that's what the police do, right? Is like,
police just like kill people randomly, like that's what they do. So how do they
killing
find time?
people and like flying helicopters to intimidate people out of public parks, like stuff like this is like killing people in their fucking bed with a no-knock warrant. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, where do they find all the time to do all that stuff, the cool stuff instead of
That's weird, right? Most people in Vietnam are not even armed; they're unarmed.
Right.
Wow, holy
right.
shit.
Yeah. And since the funny thing is that this like I love the idea of anarchists. Like you don't like Cops. I don't like cops either.
Yeah.
They give me anxiety too, even though they're not as horrible as the cops in the USA. But think that like since the pandemic started in my city in Da Nang, 2 years already. Like since the pandemic started, like we haven't seen any cops on the street. Barely. I mean, once every 3 months, and they work on the traffic in the traffic jam hour. It's like, I'm sorry, this is an authoritarian quote unquote state. This is a perfect example that we don't need cops. It's like 2 years already. Because the local government just redirected cops and military to the quarantine areas to try to organize those places. And no cops in the street for almost 2 years, and we haven't even faced any situation with cops for 2 years, and we fine.
Oh,
There's
Jesus
no
Christ.
crimes on the street,
We have
and
like
everything's so peaceful.
We have a weird relationship with cops down here where it's like they you know, like they've started carrying around guns and doing all that kind of stuff, and they're like, you know, like they're fucking terrible. Like, you know, like it's like, but it's this weird thing where the COVID response was that they weren't kind of really, you know, like there's all these like really funny videos where all these like anti-maskers and stuff were trying to bait the police into like doing something, you know, and like the police would just like be giving them masks and being like, hey, you should really be using this, buddy, or whatever. But it's mainly because our police are just really good at optics, you know. So so like you can get like shot to death if you're like a Maori dude having a mental health crisis or something like that. But if you're like someone in the middle of a pandemic that is like going around, you know, like trying to breathe on everyone and cough on people or shit like that, they'll just like, you know, be like, hey buddy, you should wear a mask or whatever. But it was
we
kind
don't
of
even need them that much. We don't even need them that much. We're fine. For 2 years in Vietnam, we're fine without cops, so don't worry.
It was it was kind of interesting because it kind of like defanged a lot of those moments where it's like, you know, they were trying to make like a viral moment to kind of like get support or whatever like that, and it kind of made the cops seem like the good guys, but like they constantly do that in other things as well, like in a lot of like, you know, kind of like land back protests or whatever like that. They'll be like literally like, you know, beating people up, pushing them over, and then they'll like pose by a bonfire with a guitar and like sing a song, and then everyone will be like,
just like
you know, and like
just like us.
that's what they put on the news. They'll put that on the news, or they'll put like a dog, like, you know, a cop like patting a dog, and they'll be like, oh, you know,
right before
like,
shooting the dog,
you know, like just shit like that. And then you know, like you see like all the photos on social media, and it'll actually be like, you know, like cops like knocking people out and like breaking their arms and stuff. Like they've just got like really good focus on their like PR.
Real quick,
in my interview with Emmy, Emmy was saying how like Papa worked to like just like completely roast the police when they, like the cops, I can't remember the exact thing, I mean but it was like the cops did like a photo op where they were like showing off a bunch of like their new cool toys, just like massive militarization, and then like Papa were able to just like completely roast them, and everyone turned against them really hardcore, and they had to like delete the post. But I was gonna say like it's the same fucking thing here. Like under the pandemic, like we've had like demonstrations from like anti-mask, anti-vaccine people who are like throwing fireworks at cops and Hitler saluting and shit. And then like the cops are just like you should go home, have a nice day. And then if people are like hey, please don't you know, take away our fucking human right to protest, they're like fucking, you know. Then you see the nasty side of the cops. You know?
Real quick, I want to interject real quick. And chat, you never have to say anything you're not comfortable with. Remember that. But I would like to see if anyone's comfortable. Where are you from? Where are you coming from, chat? What country are you in? What country do you live in? Since we're talking to people in the UK, Vietnam, America, and New Zealand right now on this panel. So it'd be really cool, and which is awesome, by the way. Can I just take a moment? Just be like, that's really fucking cool. And it makes me feel so much less alienated, especially as an American who feels like I'm like stuck in hell.
We got to all link up around the world. That's how we're gonna
for sure. We have Germany, Brazil, Canada, US. Denmark.
Should be brown, Bad Bunny. You should be brown. You're from the greatest country on earth.
That's right. Thank you.
The best.
Thank you. This is so cool. So many people, different places. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, Nat just pointed out in chat as well. Like literally, so there's a case recently that like people who aren't suffering Turf Island might not be aware, but like a woman called Sarah Everard was like arrested by arrested by a police officer, but actually he was off duty, and he just like handcuffed her and put her in the back of his car, and then he like assaulted her and murdered her. And it's like been a huge thing. It's been like all over the press, and like the protests in response, where people were like, maybe the cops shouldn't fucking horrifyingly murder women. The cops like cracked down incredibly hard. Like there were photos all over the place of like the horrible brutality there. And again, like that's the contrast. Like people who are protesting that the cops murdered a woman get fucking boots on their necks, and like dudes throwing fireworks at cops because they don't want to get the vaccine are just like, nah, that's fine.
Yeah.
A trans woman who was at the trans rights protest in Manchester yesterday that I know was actually arrested at a protest after that.
No.
I can't remember. It was like a couple of weeks after the Sarah Everard protest, and this was a Kill the Bill protest, which is about the bill.
We'll do a
we
whole
had the whole
episode
stream
about
on
the
that,
bill.
yeah.
It's gonna be a whole thing on it.
That's fine.
But basically, she was essentially like tackled to the ground and essentially stripped, and then carried away for everyone to see, and then put in the back of a wagon, driven around the whole of Manchester, and then dropped off somewhere randomly, miles away from where she lives, in a place called Widnes, which is like 20 miles.
Fucking hell.
Up to the north of Manchester. And you know, this is just like what police do in the Imperial Court, right? Just like, no, sorry.
Totally. Yeah. No, yeah, I know the case you're talking about. I saw that through social media. That's horrifying. We've gotten way off onto cops.
We have,
True, because everyone hates cops.
Sorry,
let's talk about mutual aid some more. How about that?
Slave hunters, so fuck them.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's exactly
Can we
it.
get some trans rights in the chat real quick, by the
Hell
way?
yeah.
Bun
Mule, you had
TR.
another...
Or if you're not, if you're not a sub, then just write trans rights. If you have a trans rights emote from somewhere else, or maybe a trans flag in your mobile, hell yeah.
Mule had another link that he contributed to the notes. I put it into the group chat there about the 0161 community, and this was kind of an interesting one because we had a little bit of a back and forth in the mod the Red Planet hosts group chat about whether this one is charity or mutual aid, and maybe we can kind of litigate that on stream. My feeling is that it's mutual aid, but we'll that's go Mule, do you want to Nicole? If you get it on,
I'm gonna try
for a second. I just is
it not going to work?
Meowing. I'm going to duck out. I'll be back in just.
All right, no worries. Mule, do you want to tell us all about this 0161 community?
Yes. So the 0161 community has a very interesting sort of recent history in the UK. So they're based in a place called Bolton, which is again about a similar distance away from Manchester city centre to Widnes, as we were talking about before. It's about 20 miles away, but they operate all over Greater Manchester, and so their aims and objectives are as follows: 1, to promote a strong, unified working class identity. Obviously, that could be taken many ways, but moving on. 2, uniting people to take control of their neighborhoods. Again, something that could be left open to interpretation, but I think that if you understand mutual aid from how we're talking about it, then it makes sense, right? 3, to empower the unheard and provide all with skills, guidance, and confidence.
Right.
Again, this could be applied to many different things. 4, to promote a healthy and positive lifestyle, and that is mirrored in a lot of the activities that they do. I'll go into that in a sec. And 5, to encourage conversation and exchange of knowledge of our working class history.
Yeah.
So that is essentially teach each other theory, right? That's basically what that means. Not necessarily theory, but past examples of mutual aid, past examples of building dual power structures, and past examples of successful protests, right? And stuff like that. Then when you go into what else do we got? The events that they do. So mainly what they do is they have reoccurring events at the moment. So for example, they have Muay Thai classes, which is kickboxing, Thai kickboxing. They also have football, five-a-side competitions and stuff like that. And these are really, really easy ways to sort of get working class people involved with something, because what's a working class sort of activity? Boxing and football, 100%.
Sure.
You get people from the working class involved in that, and then you say to them, yo, we're actually doing this thing next week where we're going to go and give a bunch of food. Yeah, we're gonna go and give a
Right,
bunch of food to people, you know, to poor families in need. Do you want to get involved? You know, sorry, we can't pay you, but like this is what we do, right? And so they do stuff like that. So for example, some of the previous events that they had, if I just bring them out, hold up, I'm just scrolling down. Community Summer Fun Day. Yeah, so they do like Community Summer Fun Day, for example, where they like got a bunch of people together at like a boxing academy, where they had, and obviously it's open to all ages. It's not just like, you know, an adults only thing. There's kids invited, you know, families invited, stuff like that. And it looks like from the pictures and stuff like that that you can see that it's just basically like a really wholesome family fun day. But if you're bringing people together in that environment and telling them like, right, okay, you know, what do you, or asking them, right, what do you want to see us give back to the community, kind of thing, you know? So they go around and, like, for example, over Christmas they gave a lot of toys and food to, you know, poor families like who couldn't afford to give their kids Christmas presents and stuff like that. There's also, they did a community LGBT history mural, where they got involved with the Oldham Library and created a huge mural and stuff with contributions from the community. So they do all sorts of stuff, like loads and loads and loads of stuff. And it is all paid for by donations to their it's I guess registered as a charity. I think they have to be or something like that in order to operate. I don't know how it works, but it seems like there is like a central donation element of it. So yeah, that's essentially what they're about.
So the way that they take funds in, fundamentally that's they're taking funds in and then they're saying we're going to do this with the money. The money is going to be this is why I think it's charity. It's in my opinion, it's a charity with the theme of class solidarity as a stepping stone to maybe mutual aid. But in this particular, it kind of deals with maybe the non-reformist reform kind of vibe that one of the streams are going to have soon. But that's why I instinctively was like, this feels to me like it's like, clearly it's not just giving you a meal or something. It's like we're trying to start building a foundation of sorts to be able to like get to the next step, but it just does not feel like it's at the next step yet. It feels like it's already the charity.
Mule, you put an interesting fact in the group chat about this organization.
Oh, I forgot about this.
I forgot about this.
Right. This is how you know that they're doing something good. Okay, so this
and by the way, I'm not saying they're not doing something good, by the way, for the record.
This destroys Nicole's
I'm going to get demolished.
Ideas. No.
I'm getting owned. Everyone clip this.
It's owned. It's a clip. Yeah, it's a clippable moment. It's a hot take. No. They were put on the...
Just took a big swig of wine before she heard this.
They were put on the list of left-wing terrorist organizations.
That's pretty. That's pretty based.
Okay.
By the
I was also going to say the fact that the U.S. invaded Vietnam to stop the communist threat is also, you know, when the capitalists
just police
like bully.
Action, by the way.
Yeah.
In other words, it's police action.
World police, exactly.
Yeah. But the fact that occurs is like, I always think it's like a good indication that something awesome is happening. That the U.S. is like not always not a perfect rule. I don't think it's a perfect rule, but I think you know.
In all seriousness, like you look through the list of what these folks at One Sick One Community are up to, and it's like, so if they're like organizing football matches, teaching people like to exercise and like getting people to hang out and like, you know, they're just making some folks healthy and happy and have a community, and they're placed as like a fucking terrorist organization by the Metropolitan.
It is though, and I think like what Dalmatian is saying is in the chat is how it's similar to what fascists use. Like a lot of fascist organizations that I've seen, particularly in New Zealand, will do very similar things, and also actually kind of like I know a bunch of like local gangs, but like the like not the fun type of gangs that do the same thing, where they will like they'll have like like Muay classes or do things like that, and they definitely and like there comes like other things come with that or whatever, like I know like there was like a white supremacist group in New Zealand that were pushing themselves out into all the gyms, and then like they would recruit by being like, man, this gym's kind of cool, but you should see the one that we've got. You can come and hang out there, but like there's things attached to that or whatever. So there is definitely like like I could see that like someone might be like, oh, this is like a terrorist organization because like, they get you in with this, but then they're going to
They're
give you this
recruiting.
ideology. But it's like,
Yeah.
obviously there's a huge difference between the ideology imparted by like a left-wing group that's like, hey, we should all have food and healthcare.
Well, this is
Versus like, the
yeah.
white supremacists that are like, hey, we're the fucking master race or whatever.
Well, it's really important that you say that, Tim, because this is the praxis that most left-wing anti-fascist groups do in the UK, because that is where white supremacy in the UK really did well, unfortunately. And that was the BNP going to... Kat Black does a great video on this, and it's about how like racism has evolved over time, and she touches on this like at the very start of the video, but like the BNP would go to football matches and speak to people and say, yo, was your granddad in the war? And of course everybody, not granddad, but it was your dad in the war. And of course everybody's dad was in the war in the 70s, right? Whose dad in, if it was their dad, they were fighting in the World War, right? They were in World War II. And so they would say things like, don't you think your dad would be spinning in his unmarked grave somewhere in France if he saw all these Pakistani people come into the country? And that's how they would like recruit people, right? That is one of the... So it's like anti-fascist groups in the UK basically said, right, okay, you know what? They've got a point. That's probably one of the best places to start, because people who go and watch football,
like Generation Identity, like handing out free meals with fascist literature to homeless people.
Exactly, right. And like getting people who are like really on the poverty line, because people who watch football tend to be in the UK like working class people, because it's one of those outlets. It's like, what have you got to look forward to in your life? The game. So that's what we do. Yeah.
There have been like traditions of like communist football clubs and stuff in the past. It's like, if you look in like in like pre-Soviet, the whole like Soviet area, and like in Italy as well, there was like a really big Italian football club and stuff. Communist football club, and it's like, I think that there's like something totally there as well, and like in the same way that like the Black Panthers would like organize like community projects and be like, hey, you should take these pamphlets as well, or like you should maybe join us for a reading group or whatever like that. I think that like like what this 0161 are doing with like like the Thai kickboxing and everything like that is fucking sick, because I know so many people that have been like turned onto really shitty ideology by
Nicole, your files are on the screen, just so you know.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Like they'll train at a gym, and all of a sudden like some dude's being like, hey man, you like the Joe Rogan podcast? Well, check out the Stefan Molyneux or some shit like that. Whereas like like I think just having a space that someone could come to and just train, and then be like, like, and if they see like some posters around and be like, hey, what's what's that about?
What's
whatever.
this communism thing?
Yeah. I think that could be like a really positive, because that's totally what's happening with like the football clubs and stuff. And,
I mean, it's a weird thing in the UK. Like, I live next to basically one of the most explicitly fascist football clubs in the UK.
Oh wow!
But there are also like explicitly anti-fascist football clubs as well. So it's like a weird thing. Like, people, I think, are aware of football clubs coming into violent conflict with one another, and a whole bunch of that totally is literally just team sports and people being mad about football. But some of it is also like literally like people from Millwall being like, let's look out for any black and brown people or any queers.
Someone mentioned Millwall when you said
that. If we see them at the match, and then other people being like, we know Millwall are going to do that. Let's stop them. And look, I don't think that the fact that you can donate to the 0161 makes it charity. That would be an active charity if you're not in their community and you're just giving to this thing. That would be an active charity. But I think it's absolutely clear to me, like, this is a community, and therefore it's a network of mutual aid. It's people who are helping one another, and they're organizing. A lot of what we talked about today on stream already has been like very anarchist kind of model, where it's all about just like, whenever people need things in a very loose and unorganized fashion, we're just like giving. And to be clear, it's not that I believe anarchism is just disorganized. Obviously I don't. I'm an anarchist. But that is that more sort of fashion, whereas this is a centralized thing, right? And it's still mutual aid. Having a hierarchy or a central like planning and organizing does not make it not mutual aid.
Totally agree with Sophie here, because it is the same thing in Vietnam, I got to say. Because Vietnam, actually, we started and we took power, we took the support from the people because of mutual aid and dual power structure. We built our Communist Party since like the 20s and the 30s when Vietnam was still under colonialism of France and then the fascism of Japan. So that it was like we were severely suppressed and oppressed at that time. And how we got the support from millions of Vietnamese people at the time. 90% of Vietnamese people at the time didn't even know how to read and write. They didn't even understand what communism meant at that time at all. But one of the main reasons why we had a successful communist revolution was because the communists, we broke into the rice storage house of the French and the Japanese, and we took the rice and redistributed the rice to the people. That was why we got the support from millions of people. That was why we had a successful revolution. That was why we took a power from the mutual aid and we built dual power structure to fight against colonialism and fascism and then imperialism from the USA. So that is why my message to all the comrades, especially comrades from the West imperial core, is that you have to be the ones that people think of the first when they need help.
Yes.
They got their house broken, they're hungry,
That's
they got
exactly
problem with cops or they got injured or something. You're going to be the first one they think of, they think about and ask for help. That is how you got the support, to get support.
That's
from
exactly
the people
it.
And slowly, and that is why a lot of people might don't understand about why Vietnam is Vietnam today when the government and the people work closely together as one entity, because we went through all of that. We spent decades with each other doing mutual aid and building dual power structure. That is why we have Vietnam today. It is not perfect yet. Of course, we still have many problems, but at least we are a little bit one step further in the development of having mutual aid and dual power structure. And I hope that we can set an example or a lesson for you to learn and study. And then for now, you in the situation that you're heavily oppressed by your state and you don't receive any freaking help from them. And you are the ones who gonna help yourself. Nobody else does.
Yes,